Retirement isn't just quitting your work. Obviously, once you're done typically decades of work, there's a transition that you go through into the next phase of your life. And for most people, it's a brand new world. And a lot of people enjoy, obviously, going into retirement, but a lot of people really struggle with this. And in my 25 years plus as an investment advisor, as a certified financial planner, I worked with a lot of people. And I would say that I saw pretty much the whole spectrum of both success and failure in transitioning from working into retirement. I guess you could say I saw the good, I saw the bad, and I saw the ugly in this regard. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be retired, this video is going to give you some insight into that. I'm going to share with you in the video today 2 case studies of personal clients that I worked with. And one of them shows the benefits of being prepared properly and how that can help you transition. I'm also going to share with you a second scenario which shows what can happen if you don't prepare properly. Now, obviously, I'm going to change some of the facts so that these clients, former clients, cannot be identified, but you will get the gist of their experiences. Now, in both of these cases I'm going to speak about today, the clients had money. So it wasn't a case, or neither of these are cases of people not saving or not investing or not working and not having money to provide for their retirement. I want to sort of clarify that off the start. In one case here, the clients had sufficient money to live a comfortable life. They knew what their goals were. And although they weren't ultra wealthy, they did have what they needed to live their goals. In the second case, the client had more than enough money to live the lifestyle. They never would have spent all the money that they had saved up during their working years. I am going to start this exercise here by talking about a couple that I worked with for more than 20 years. And I started working with them in their early days of starting a business, so in their late 30s. And we worked right through up during their transition into retirement, the prepping for it, and actually a few years into the years that they were actually retired. So when they were starting, when we started working together, they were like any other person really. They'd started a business, they were paying down their mortgage, they were investing on a regular basis. They had basically set a plan in place to get to the retirement days, and we worked through that process. Eventually, during the term of this process, we moved into the actual sale of the business and that the full-scale retirement. Now, there's something in particular that really stood out to me with this couple. In their minds, years before they actually got to retirement, they were able to put themselves in that scenario and visualize what life would be like when they got there. They had projected things like how much money they're going to need to spend to do the things they want to do when they retire. They looked at things like their sources of income, their travel plans, their dreams, even the hobbies, even the things they would be doing in retirement were all predetermined. So what did they do to make their experience such a good one? Well, first and most obvious to me is that they were incredibly proactive. So they took the time, they made a plan for their retirement, and they visualized. Like, as I said, they kind of put themselves in the position of imagining that they were already there. When we talk about people doing their homework, I've never seen a scenario where people did their homework better than these people. And this sort of takes me to my first major talking point here. A lot of people don't want to do the homework. You just kind of hope and you imagine that everything's going to turn out okay, but you don't actually have a plan. And in this case, these clients had a plan. Now, obviously, over all of those years, they revised it, they reshaped it. The vision they had when they were in their 30s didn't exactly play out when they were in their early 60s when they finally retired. In fact, there were some last-minute changes, but the overall path was set out from a very, very young age. From a financial perspective, they were absolutely top-notch. They looked at 2 key elements for their retirement years. They looked at what assets they would need in retirement. They looked at their cash flow. If you are just new to this and you're not familiar with what the government-sponsored pension plans are that might assist you in your retirement, I will put a link to a video I've done here which talks about the CPP, the OAS, the GIS system, all the benefits that you can get through the government-sponsored programs. And I will encourage you to watch that video here if you're just starting out in the whole process here. As far as my couples were concerned, with their assets, they projected what they need. Things like, they want to have their house paid off, etc. They wanted to have a vacation property. We're going to talk about that in just a moment here. They also projected their income sources and their expenses, and they really did the math on it. I mean, they would come into my meetings with spreadsheets full of numbers that, of course, changed as the years went by, but they were on the right path. There's something else that they did very, very well. They identified what they needed to do in order to get to those retirement years. They looked at the time they started this process, what do we have now? What are our assets? What's our net worth? And then what will we need when we get to that point? So there's the now, and then there's the then, and they took the steps that they needed to make sure that they would get there. The tasks that needed to be done between now and then, they actually created a very detailed process that itemized their goals between day one and day retirement. And we're talking about basic things like paying down the debt, investing, building up their savings. They monitored these on a regular basis. And a critical part of their retirement plans, which made it successful, is they prepared for their leisure time. Retirement is somewhat of a lifestyle, right? You don't have your work to fill your days up. So it's something that you do, what are your days going to look like on a regular basis? And in this case, an example, this couple are avid skiers. And so what they did was they actually took the steps of buying a small ski cabin on a ski hill in British Columbia. And knowing that they would be making use of that when they retirement, they purchased that over a number of years so that when they retired, they actually had that. And now it's theirs to enjoy in retirement without all the rigmarole of arranging a different vacation every time. Again, it's the vision. It's the understanding of what they wanted retirement to be for them that helped them meet this objective. They also kept track of all of the details and they updated them as the years went by. Now, another key thing in my mind that they did is in the year prior to their actual retirement date, they simulated retirement. So for the full year, they lived off the income that they expected they would need in retirement. And this kind of, for them, it really helped confirm their strategy. And if there had needed to be any last minute changes, they could adjust for those. But they ended up making, as it turns out, a very easy, almost like a second nature type of transition into retirement. And I think that this dry run, while they still had the income coming in from the business before they sold it, helped them get to that comfort level to actually, pull the plug on their career. The keys, in my opinion, to this couple, they had a plan and they knew their plan inside out. They stayed on top of the financials, and I would remember the meetings where, generally in a meeting, I would bring a lot of stuff to my client's attention. Well, it was more of a sounding board. They knew exactly where they're at, and it was more of a collaboration than it was a one-way dialogue. They planned, they tracked, they imagined, and in short, they prepared for their retirement. And that went a long way to helping them when it came their time to transition as smoothly as possible. Now, I am also going to talk about a second case here, and the story I'm going to share with you isn't as rosy as one we just talked about. And this is really a study in the reality that retirement isn't just about crunching your number. So what happens if you don't have a plan? What happens if you haven't taken the time at a younger age to actually imagine the experience, and then when the day comes for you to transfer into retirement? In this case, I worked with a client who did some things right. He did a number of things wrong. Now, not financially. This client had a lot of money. There's no way that he could have gone through with his lifestyle and spent the money that he had accumulated during his retirement years, or during his working years, to use in his retirement years. But he also had no plan for after work. He couldn't really get his brain into imagining the day where he was no longer working. The first mistake that he made, in my opinion, is this. He basically lived to work. He was a longtime employee in the industry that he absolutely loved to work in. And it was a real mixed blessing. And that's sort of the good part of the story, is that he loved going to work every day. And he was a loyal, effective employee. But for the more than 20 years that I worked with him as well, I don't ever remember him talking about anything outside of his job. Even when we talked, or I would share with him, okay, the day will come when you're no longer working. What's that going to look like? He never talked about going on a vacation. In fact, I don't remember him. I know he never went on a vacation in the years we worked together. I don't remember him even mentioning that. And in this case, he ended up working past the normal retirement age. He worked into his early 70s. And during the time, like I say, he never took any time off. Another thing I noticed as well is he never planned. He never talked about when work would end, what am I going to do? He had no exit plan from work. He had no plan B. Now, the saddest part of this story is this. That sometimes happens. His job was eliminated due to a corporate restructuring. And obviously, when you retire, you want to control when you go out, but you don't always have that luxury. And with very little notice, this gentleman found himself retired involuntarily. And that really, really shook him up. It shook him actually to his core. Financially, he was well off. Like I say, he worked into his 70s, not because he needed the money, but because his life really revolved around work. And whether he was forced out or not, in this case, I think the issue would have been the same. What he did correctly, he plowed away the cash. He lived way beneath his means, which is something that we always aspire to. He was very, very conservative, and he always had money put away sort of just in case something happened. But he didn't have those plans. He had no outside interests. Contrast that to the first set of clients I worked with who had very specific interests. And in this case here, this gentleman really, really struggled with a retirement. And I would say even roughly 10 years or so into retirement, when I was still working with him, he hadn't accepted that he was now retired. And there was a sense of bitterness that he carried with him right to this day, I believe is the case. And like I say, he stopped working on someone else's terms. And because he hadn't made preparations for when that day would come, it made, quite frankly, for a very, very unpleasant experience in his case. These two cases, I hope, illustrate the importance of planning. First, you need to do something when you're in retirement. You're not going to work every day. Some of the goals that you have for retirement need to be clear in your mind. Secondly, you need to ensure that you are financially secure when your time does come. Both of these are equally important. Retirement is both monetary, and both aspects are critical to a happy, to a fulfilling retirement. Now, on the financial side, if you're wondering how much you're going to need to retire, this video right here will give you all the tools that you need to answer that question. The link for our Investing Academy is in the description below. I thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.